Hello, this is Archie Dunlop with Talking Astrology with Archie on Friday, June the 2nd, 2023. And where I am, it's 1:15 a.m. And I want to talk about Sunday's full moon. Yes, on Sunday, June the 4th, 2023, there is a full moon. Now, a lot of people go on and on and on about full moons. There are going to be some very long videos on YouTube about this full moon on Sunday. But, it's not an eclipse. It's not necessarily a big deal. Most of us are not really going to be impacted very much by this full moon. Nonetheless, it's something you can't miss. It's the one astronomical event which is glaringly obvious. There's a big white disk in the sky, so it's got to mean something. So my job today is to explain how I see this full moon and what I think its impact might be. So let's have a look at the chart of the full moon. Now, as you might have gathered by now, I am not a big fan of going on and on about spirituality. You can go on and on about it, can't you? But it's just hot air, really. I'm not into excessively mixing astrology with spirituality. That's just not me. So, as far as this full moon is concerned, it's a Trump full moon. I mean, the reason it's a Trump full moon is because Trump is a Gemini and he has the moon in Sagittarius. And here we have it. Sun in Gemini, moon in Sagittarius. Now, on the surface, you might think that Gemini and Sagittarius are pretty similar signs. They're both positive. They both like talking a lot of energy there. It's easy to mix up Gemini and Sagittarius particularly when you're thinking about a full moon. But really, there are some big differences between Gemini and Sagittarius. Gemini, and I speak as a Gemini, Gemini is into ideas. It's into thought processes. It's sometimes into facts. It's in its own way. Gemini is quite detailed and actually can be quite limited. It just focuses so much on factual details and perhaps trivial little pieces of gossip that it just can't see the wood for the trees. Now, Sagittarius, by contrast, is not really a thinking sign. It's a sign that's about expansion. It's about big ideas. It's about having freedom. And so Gemini and Sagittarius can actually clash. Sagittarius is about the big idea. Gemini can be just about little factual trivialities. And so I think that is the clash with this full moon. How do we deal with those factual trivialities? And how do we combine them with this big idea going beyond our own horizons? And it can be really difficult and it can be really frustrating. And this full moon is about a broader realization, as every full moon is about a realization. The moon is full. It's the light of the moon shines light on everything. So if we're honest with ourselves, we might start to see that our obsession with facts, it is Gemini season, is just not going anywhere. It's not helping us. Data, for example, we all talk about data science and that kind of stuff, gathering loads and loads of data, but really we're missing the big picture. And Sagittarius is telling us that we're missing the big picture. Yet the sun is in Gemini. Sun is intrinsically stronger from the moon. And so it's tempting to just blast people with facts and data and just not to listen to that fundamental sparking genius that's trying to express itself. So let people talk. Let that Sagittarian tactlessness express itself. Maybe we can learn something from it. Maybe we should listen to people's criticism, people's insults. Insults can be a good thing. If people insult us, it may be they're trying to help us. So consider that if you have an argument today. Not just today. Remember, a full moon is not a one-day wonder. A full moon is describing certainly the fortnight ahead, maybe even the month ahead. So I'm talking about the whole period from June until the next, June the 4th until the next new moon, and quite possibly beyond. Now, this full moon does have some impact on relationships, and that might not be immediately obvious. Reason being is, look at Venus. Venus is at 2839 Cancer. So that means that the Sun is exactly 45 degrees from Venus, and the Moon is 135 degrees from Venus. So Venus is really configured with this full moon. And so I would have said that this full moon, remember, a full moon is about a realization. And I think for many of us, this full moon is going to give us a realization about a relationship we are in. Now, this realization, chances are, is going to be a negative realization. We're going to perhaps realize that someone is no good for us. That doesn't mean to say that the person is bad. I mean, look, Venus is in Cancer. That's a very nice position for Venus. Perhaps we're going to realize that someone is being too clingy, that someone is too emotional for us. And we might think, well, hold on, this person is just going to grind us down. They might really care about us, but do we really need to have this? Is this what we want? But I suppose a realization doesn't necessarily mean you want to get rid of someone, but a realization means that you start to understand someone for what they really are. Then you can make a decision. Of course, it might work the other way. It might be that we realize that we really care about someone, that Venus in Cancer, someone who is really good for us, can nurture us, and perhaps in the past we have been unkind or cruel to this person or ignored them. And maybe with this full moon, we'll have a sudden realization that this person really is the person we need. Now, full moons do have a political and social impact. Now, I have set this chart for Westminster in England, and so this full moon could have an impact on the UK. Let me just explain what I mean by this. I'm going to set up an astro map for Europe, and I will show you exactly what I mean, I hope. So there's Europe, and this yellow line here are all the places where the moon and the sun are right on the horizon. In other words, you've got the sun is rising and the moon is setting all at once, and you can see that this line takes us through Scotland, pretty close to London, close enough, I think, to affect the UK, close to Paris, Milan, through Sicily. And I think this yellow arc, is where this full moon could, in theory, have a big impact on society. I suppose that could be struggle with authorities, perhaps a realization about the way society is going, and that might manifest as, popular unrest or something like that. And notice Mars. Mars is cutting this line, and there's Paris. So Paris, London to a lesser extent. So this area here could be quite heavily affected by the full moon. Now, going further east, at the exact time of the full moon, Saturn is on the midheaven, going through St. Petersburg and Kiev, maybe Turkey as well. Well, it is going through Turkey. Ankara is about here, so that might affect Turkey. This full moon, Erdogan has just been re-elected as president, so this red line might be an area of high tension. You could say, is it going to be bad for Ukraine, this full moon? You might say so, because Saturn is exactly on the midheaven in Kiev. But on the other hand, Saturn is exactly on the midheaven in Russia's second most important town, St. Petersburg. Saturn on the midheaven is about government, maybe governmental crisis. I think the governmental crisis is more likely to have an impact on Ukraine from Russia, because St. Petersburg is not obviously is not the capital city of Russia. Moscow, obviously Moscow is, and this full moon doesn't really impact Moscow. So that is something for Ukrainians to consider. What this full moon is, what kind of full moon, how this full moon might impact them. Now, I should say I am being theoretical. Trying to associate geography with a full moon. In reality, it's quite hit and miss, this astrological technique. So, don't think what I'm saying about Europe is definitely going to be happening. I have, in fact, trying to use this technique, I actually have more misses than hits, but I suppose I had to be honest, and I had to show you how I might be looking at the full moon. But, overall, I think for ordinary individuals, I don't think that this full moon is a particularly big deal for most of us. I think there are some lessons there. I think relationships could be impacted by this full moon. We may have to make some decisions, and as with every full moon, we'll be able to see the world in a slightly clearer way, and hopefully when we see the truth, whatever it might be, we'll be able to act on it. Anyway, that's all I'm going to say about this full moon, and I hope that you found what I said useful.